The next tool we're going to look at is provided by a company called Triaster. Now, Triaster have two sides to their software. They have the authoring side, which is called Process Navigator, and they have a process library, which is where all of your created content is stored. Now, I'm going to focus on the authoring side of the software for this session because it is free to download and free to use. And it sits on top of Microsoft Visio, so you will need Visio installed on your machine as well. So this is the map control console, and I'm just going to create a new process for HR. And if I click on the create a new process, and Visio will then open for me. Now you'll notice that I do have a branded look to the drawing page, just to make it a bit more personal to our organisation. So starting off then, we can see the shapes down the left hand side. These are all the shapes we're permitted to use on our drawing, fitting into three basic families. So we have activities, so these are things that we do. We have deliverables, which are things we use and produce. And then we have hyperlinks, which link us off to other resources. Now, if we start with the title of the process, so in this case, I'm going to look at obtaining authorization to recruit. And processes always start with a deliverable or a trigger point. So here we're going to start with a vacant position. Now it's always difficult to talk and type at the same time, so please excuse me for that. It's like rubbing your stomach and patting your head, or is it the other way around? And so now we obtain approval from the management team. And you'll notice underneath the activity here, I have a white box which is showing me who's responsible for the task, and I can see a red warning triangle indicating that data has not been completed. So if I look at what that is, it's looking for responsibility and accountability. So if I put in here who's responsible is going to be the functional lead, and the accountability is going to be the functional manager. As soon as I enter both those fields in, that warning triangle disappears. So then I'll have my next deliverable, which is going to be assigned. Oh, let's get my case sorted out. Authorization to recruit. To which now I can then copy this shape and prepare my job description. Working my way through the process again. It sounds obvious, but we always need to ensure that we have outputs from every activity. So we are going to have our job description. So this is something you could actually show me. And then we are going to build the job advert and submit for approval. And the final stage is it's actually going to give me, this is going to be a draft job advert. And I wanted to have a decision point at the end here to say, are there any changes required? And I've used an activity there, and really what I should have done is use a decision. So I can actually change a shape from one shape to another. So now I can say that there are changes required, or we have an approved job advert. So very simple, just drag and drop. And what we can do now is we can link the process together. Now I'm just using a standard Visio connector tool. There are different ways of connecting shapes together, but just for speed, just going to show you how to connect shapes up. And we can connect onto different faces, as you just saw there, as I caught the bottom of a shape. But we always tend to put inputs into the left and outputs out the right. and where we've got changes required, we can actually link that back to build the job advert. Not particularly attractive on the screen, but a very useful function within the Triaster system is this thing called auto layout, which will align the map straight on the page. Right at the bottom, I can see that I have process owner, process number. All of these are data items, so I can just populate that. And if I put in the head of HR is the process owner, and the process number, we're going to call this HR 032.11. And that information there appears at the bottom of the map. We can also do things like linking out to documents. So if I add a hyperlink to this activity, I can then find a document that lives on my machine, and it's looking for Visio files to start with, but we can actually point at an Office file. And now here's our authority to recruit, and that will link off to a document. Very, very simple and easy to do. So I'm just going to save this away. Now this is what I call a small bite-sized chunk of a process. This is all relevant to the functional lead or the functional manager, and doesn't involve any of the other steps of selecting the candidate or making a formal job offer, because it's not really relevant to them. The advantage of the Triaster platform is we can start linking processes together via what we call an end-to-end process. And I'm just going to now copy the title of that. I'm going to just save this away, drop it in my HR folder. And we can see that the output deliverable here is an approved job advert. I'm going to add some other processes that I've created earlier on, which will link to this. And I'm just going to close that down. And if I look back at my map control console, I can see I've got my select candidate and make the formal job offer. I'm going to link these processes together. It's very, very simple and easy to do. And then I'm going to do something called refresh the off-page connectors. So let's take a look at that map that I just created a moment ago. So this authorization to recruit, if I open the map up, you see right at the end of the process, Process Navigator is automatically detected. There's another process to link to, and if I take a look at that, it's going to select candidate. Now that's great. We talk about process maps flowing through at what we call the seabed level, but if I'm a manager and I want to get an overview of the HR process, it'd be really good to see this in one map. And Triaster has a really useful function here to draw those processes up into a higher level. So if I take a look here at generate the next level, I can take all three of those lower level maps and create a HR overview. Very, very clever is it takes the process names and the inputs and outputs from the lower level and will create you a top level overview. What it doesn't do is it doesn't populate the responsibilities of the activity or put in any of the process owner or process numbering. It wants you to do that as a human. It just takes a couple of seconds to run. And we can see the other processes, if I just maximize that up, that we link to. So here's my approved job advert, and it links to a rejection list, a rejected candidate, and a job offer that's been made to the candidate. These become drill downs into a lower level. So if I look at obtain authorization to recruit, and I can just double click to go down on that, it takes me to the lower level, which is a map that I created earlier with my hyperlink, which goes off to another process, or I can go back up to the top level. So very simple, very powerful, very easy to use authoring side, and free too. So that's Triaster Process Navigator.